So I finally entered my first game jam, and it was truly a lot of fun, but deciding to have a physics-based character probably wasn't the best idea. On September 30th, 2019, the one-script jam began. The theme? Leave something behind. Time limit? A week. So me and my friend, who also worked on Foxlings, Jaden, started brainstorming some ideas for what we could possibly do. Due to term 1 consisting of a lot of 3D based assessments, I knew I wanted to do a 2D game instead, as I had never done one before. And after a little while, me and Jaden both thought of the same sort of idea. To have the player itself leaving parts of itself behind to complete puzzles. Simple, right? Apparently not for me. The first thing I did was try to get a 2x2 of cubes parented to an object and able to be clicked on. Since this was the one script jam, my main way of separating the code was through tags. And a lot of them. After getting the 2x2 to fall and collide, I tried setting up the on mouse down event, except it only triggered on the parent object, and not the children, even though the parent isn't empty. This had me stumped for a while, until I found out that rigid body parents will combine all child colliders into one big one. So I played around with it, trying to get it to work without a rigid body, but that didn't go too well. So I decided to give each cube a number, and have that number when pressed detach the block, and that worked, but it just didn't feel great to play. So I went back to the drawing board and found a component called a fixed joint. Now this may have been obvious to some of you, but I've never used a joint before. But finally, I got it working, and it was so satisfying. After finally getting the main mechanic started, I could go about improving it. I noticed that after letting go of some blocks, you have less mass but still have the same amount of force being applied, so it caused the cube to spin wildly. To fix this, I kept a list of the blocks and multiplied the rotation and slide forces by this count. Now when you lose some blocks, the rotation and slide speed feel about the same. Now that the character felt fairly fun to play with, I started working on the tutorial level. This would teach you the basic mechanics in an interactive way. Now we needed a way to move between each room. I had never done anything like this before, so the way I set it up was pretty janky. I had a very thin trigger that upon exiting would compare your position with its position. If the player's X position was greater than the trigger's X position, increase the room count by 1 and move the camera to the corresponding empty. And this worked fairly well. There was definitely a problem though, but I'll go over that closer to the end. Whilst I was busy creating the tutorial level, Jaden got to work and pumped out a start to level 1, which introduced our first puzzle mechanic, the button. Honestly, I couldn't be stuffed animating this, so it was just a simple trigger above it that would activate or deactivate its child, the door, upon staying or exiting. And again, this worked fairly well, but ended up needing to be changed later on. Occasionally the door would either stay open without anything inside the trigger, or not stay open even if a block was inside the trigger. So instead of checking if a block was staying and exiting, I just increased a counter by 1 every time the on-trigger enter was executed, and decreased it by 1 every time on-trigger exit was executed. As long as the counter was not 0, the button was considered active, and this worked perfectly. Was it the best way? Probably not, but it worked, and that's all that mattered. At this point, I was super busy and forgot to record any new development, although at this stage, all we basically did was create more levels and added a ball prefab, which was just another physics object to play with. After playing around in the levels, we noticed a couple game-breaking bugs. One of the worst was triggering room changes twice, causing the camera to be one room ahead of the player. This is probably an easy fix, but wasn't noticed until it was too late. Essentially what's happening is the core of the player goes through the trigger and then will go back in, but instead of exiting through the other side, it will exit the same direction again, increasing the camera position twice. This should be an easy fix though. I just have to decrease the width to practically 0, giving no chance for the player to enter and exit on the same side. Another massive bug we found was on the second level. Near the end you basically use up all your cubes, and as a 1x2 you have to slide up this ramp. The problem? Well, for starters, the player isn't moving up the slope, but rather into it. And when you're only 2 blocks, you don't have the power to overcome the friction, thus making this level impossible. Almost. People still beat it, but it's not easy. A couple hours before the jam submissions closed, me and Jaden tried to play through the levels, make sure they were playable, but we naively thought the end would be fine and skipped it and started testing level 3, so this was entirely on us. Besides the countless problems and bugs we faced, we both really enjoyed participating in this jam, and so did the people who played it. Besides the game-breaking bugs, all in all, I am super happy with how this game turned out. And considering before this I only had 10 weeks worth of experience, building an almost fully functioning game in a week was a huge accomplishment for me. And if you really like the idea of this game, we plan on continuing development, except with more than one script this time. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. We had a lot of fun making this game, and I'll leave a link in the description to the itch.io page where you can play this game for yourself. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You know what to do. Peace out.